As some of you may know, Blake and I are students from Australian Catholic University, currently engaging on our fourth year project placement with CP Achieve, as Carolyn mentioned earlier. I was personally drawn to the project due to working closely with cerebral palsy in my workspace in a paediatric clinic. And a lot of my clients were starting to begin to think about their transition into adult healthcare, and I observed how difficult that transition was for those people.
And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I was also really drawn to this project after completing my last clinical placement with Cerebral Palsy Alliance and also working as a support worker for young people with neuromuscular conditions. Working with these families and learning from their lived experience and perspectives was something that's really inspired me to want to work in this field, and hopefully that passion is reflected in the project today.
Our project outline was to begin to plan for the transition out of CP Achieve for consumer research partners. CP Achieve will conclude at the end of 2024 due to funding constraints. We work towards ensuring consumers are transitioned smoothly out of CP Achieve to begin navigating their own journey post CP Achieve through performing research and conducting our own sessions to gather information on what will be most beneficial to assist with this process. Some of you may have received a video from Dinah, and others may have participated in discussions with Blake and myself. But we hope that this isn't the first time that you're hearing about the conclusion of CP Achieve today. Today, we'll outline our project scope, discuss our summary of the literature review, provide insight into results from discussions with partner feedback, provide an overview of suggestions derived from our findings, and discuss our possible recommendations. And finally, we will open the floor up for some questions from you all. I'll hand over to Blake now to discuss the outline of our role in the transition process.
Thanks, Kyla. So initially, when we started this project around 10 weeks ago now, the project was still quite fluid and the scope was quite large. So in order for us to develop those project objectives and deliverables, we initially completed a literature review related to the experiences of transitioning between services for people with disabilities and some strategies that could be implemented to best support them both emotionally and physically in terms of what resources they might need. So Kyla will go into a bit more detail about those key findings shortly and how they shaped our project and the resources that we're generating. But as Kyla previously stated, the current stage of transition that CP Achieve is moving through is what we've called the ending phase, according to Bridges' model of transition, which is on the slides now. So this is the model that we've been working off over the last 10 weeks, and it was developed by William Bridges to help individuals and organizations to better understand and more effectively manage the process of change. As we all know, change can be quite difficult due to a variety of complex emotions that might be experienced both positively and negatively. So our main objective for this stage of the project was to really evaluate the impact that the conclusion of CP Achieve is having on our research partners from CP Unite, CP Voice, our parent advisory groups, and our independent research partners. As we know, many of these consumer partners have been involved with CP Achieve since those initial stages and have become key members in the research. So we really wanted to hear from them firsthand to understand what their hopes, fears, and expectations were post CP Achieve and how we can best support them through that process into what we're calling the new beginnings phase. So we aim to meet and speak with as many of our consumer research partners as possible about their experience of being part of CP Achieve, both as a research partner and also their personal experiences. And over that 10 weeks, we've now transitioned into what we believe is that neutral zone. So that's based off a lot of the responses that we received from our research partners. Whilst they shared some of their emotions of being quite sad that the project's coming to an end, they were also quite realistic in that projects have to have an end date, and they seemed quite eager to start looking for potential future opportunities. So we'll explore their responses a little bit more in depth shortly, but first I'll hand back over to Kyla, who's going to go through our literature review findings, and hopefully that will give you all a bit of a better understanding of how our meetings and our deliverables were developed further.
Thank you, Blake. When beginning this project, we were determined to ensure that our recommendations were both evidence-based and also consumer research partner-centred. Therefore, we conducted our literature review using databases such as PubMed, CINAHL, and Medline prior to sitting down with our consumer research partners, just to make sure that all our information was well informed, and that helped with us to make the best questions to ask, information to incorporate into the discussions, and appropriate recommendations to suggest. We were aware that due to the extensive work performed in CP Achieve, the conclusion would cause a large array of emotions, and we wanted to ensure that we were able to minimize the negative emotions as best as we could, taking into account how loss of identity and connections may impact the consumer research team. We developed research questions to conduct our study with overreaching question of, for young people with cerebral palsy, what strategies will best be suitable to transition out of a research program? From there, we established further smaller questions, including what strategies and strengths do people with disability possess to assist during transition periods? What unique issues do people with cerebral palsy confront when facing transition? And how can the Bridges transition model be implemented to understand the transition of people with cerebral palsy out of programs like CP Achieve? We found research that supported the use of the Bridges model, specifically placing our magnifying glass over the ending, losing, and letting go stage. This included initiating the conversation and assisting in managing the emotions corresponding to loss. It was discovered that the best way to do so was by incorporating the recognition of loss, addressing the emotions, communicating clearly with consumer research partners, and providing resources for support, and possibly using a symbolic act to reflect and show appreciation. A key consideration mentioned multiple times in the studies included balancing support and autonomy during the transition period. One study discussed the benefits of adjusting the decision-making process to adapt one's physical autonomy or the level of independence, which in non-jargon terms means finding a way for consumers to feel comfortable when making their decisions, such as diluting the choices, but essentially the individual is still making that choice. The notion of preserving connections and networks built within CP Achieve was a theme that was repeated throughout each study, exploiting its value in shared experience and deep connection to informally provide support to consumers to discuss difficult topics of transition and their journey forward. Though peer support is essential for smooth transition, it is also important to maintain clear communication with people that they consider their leaders during the transition process, and provide resources so consumers can feel informed, secure, and supported within the journey approaching. This includes recommending resources or services required if formal support is required to manage emotional distress. If we were to take one main factor out of our literature review, it would be not making decisions for the consumer research partners, but providing a stage to voice what they would like the transition to look like. And from there, we develop a plan of action and deliverable resource designed around their perspective and recommendations. This leads us to the discussion we had with the research partners, which I'll hand over to Blake to discuss further.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to go through some of those responses that we received during our meetings and also via emails from our research partners and share them with you all. We think that it was such beautiful feedback that we got, so we really want to take this opportunity to give credit to the work that everyone involved has done in making CP Achieve a memorable experience for our partners. So Kyla and I were fortunate to meet with some consumers over a month ago now. We had 2 meetings, one with some parents from the parent group, and then we also had a meeting with around 13 of our partners from CP Voice and CP Unite. And then we were also able to get some written feedback from members who were unable to attend those meetings via email. So we might have a look at our parent meeting first. During this meeting, we asked our parents about some of their experience as a research partner, their feelings towards CP Achieve ending, and what their concerns or fears and hopes may be for the future. So when the parents reflected on some of their favorite experiences, it became very evident that both parents had really enjoyed the networking aspect of this project and being able to connect with other parents and young families with cerebral palsy. They both expressed that taking an active role in the research was also one of their favorite aspects, and being able to often swerve the research in different directions based on what they felt was needed really made them feel heard and valued. Neither parent seemed to have any major concerns or negative experiences. However, they did discuss often feeling just a little bit time poor in terms of being able to attend the meetings every single time on top of living their daily lives. But often that's something that's out of our control. In terms of how they were feeling, both parents expressed those emotions of feeling quite sad about the program ending and what it's meant for them and their families. But again, they were quite aware that the projects have to have a start and an end date. And, they expressed that strong sense of pride of what they have achieved in the time that it has been running. They were also really grateful for the connections that they've been able to make and the networks, both with other parents and children with the lived experience, and also being able to connect with researchers and the stakeholders that have given them some opportunities outside of CP Achieve. Both parents stated that they have felt supported so far during the transition as well, and that adequate time has been given, in the form of those meetings that we held with them, which was really good feedback for us that they are feeling supported right now and that we've started these meetings early enough, which is really, really good feedback. When we asked them to reflect on some of their fears and concerns, a very real concern that both parents raised was, I guess, the final destination of their research and the impact that it's going to have on the future. They both stated, how much time and energy goes into those papers, and they really hope that it finds its way onto student and academics radars, and that it does make the impact that they were hoping for. Their biggest concern, was that it will end up in a virtual drawer and it'll never get opened and read. But it was really nice that we were able to give the feedback to them that Kyla and I have actually had some of those papers come across our desk at university and that it is already making a difference, which is really, really nice for them to hear. And then in terms of their hopes, leading on from that they hope that the research has a long-lasting impact on the future and will hopefully shape future research programs. So some really, really nice feedback from our parent group. I'll jump into the feedback that we got from our young adults. So these are some screenshots from our meeting of the whiteboards. And as you can see, they had a lot of feedback to share with us, which was really, really insightful for us and really helpful in guiding our project. So in terms of their experiences as well, on that next slide, every consumer had a positive experience to share with the group, and some of them had multiple experiences to share, which was really nice to hear. And some of those recurring themes seem to be that increased sense of confidence and personal growth as a result of this program, as well as developing friendships and connecting with people from across Australia. We had one partner who directly quoted, "CP Achieve gave me the confidence to share my experiences and learn how I can support others with CP who may be struggling with their mental health." So really nice feedback just in terms of the community that's been built through CP Achieve and the skills that these research partners have been able to develop. We also got some great feedback just on the accessibility features that CP Achieve has been able to implement over their meetings, specifically for some of our users that are AAC users or that have visual impairments. They've just felt very supported through that process as well. There was minimal negative experience that they shared again. And in terms of how they're feeling at the current process of change and ending, they also felt that they're being supported by having these meetings, which is really nice. When we look at their fears and concerns, it was quite similar to our parents, where they worry that the research isn't going to be implemented and have the impact that they would like it to have. And several of the young adults also shared concerns relating to transitioning into adult services and the lack of support that they often feel in this. And their role within CP Achieve has provided them a sense of support. And unfortunately, that's a role that is now going to be taken away from them. So I think one of their concerns was, trying to keep that connections with everybody so they do have a support system to help navigate that. And then finally, in terms of their hopes, on the reverse of those fears and concerns, they really hope to maintain those connections and involvement as a research partner, which was really nice for us to hear because obviously they've had such a positive experience with CP Achieve that they would like to do something similar in the future. Many of the young people said they'd enjoyed being seen and heard as an expert in their lived experience and want to continue being heard. Some of them also discussed that their hopes for future research projects to be implemented include working on the transition from child to adult services. So that's an area of interest that they would like to see more research be done on, and hopefully they've got those skill sets now to lead that in future research. So to wrap up, that was a lot of information, but we got a lot of really good feedback from them. And it was really insightful into their feelings about the project and I guess the significance of this role for them as a research partner. So we really hope that that summary conveys the importance of the role for them and gives you an idea of how they may be feeling as a result of the project ending, and gives some context to why Kyla and I have now made some of these recommendations and our deliverables.
All right, back to me. Once we collected the information from the consumer research partners and the parents advisory group, we were able to put our heads together and use the recommendations made to discuss potential deliverables that we could present, and we would go into more depth about that a little bit later. A common discussion involved creating a form of networking that will maintain the strengthened connections made throughout CP Achieve. This network is required to be self-sustaining and without an end date, possibly including maintaining group chats between consumers or sharing contact details. It was commonly said that the disadvantage of CP Achieve was the reduced communication opportunities due to timing, funding, or availability. Therefore, providing a network run by consumers, research partners, allows for more flexibility in running interactions, how the consumer research partners want that to look like. When thinking over the possible assistance our project can provide in the transition process, we determined that we could use the discussions used in the meetings to take the beneficial practice from CP Achieve to find future opportunities for consumer research partners, and keeping in mind the non-favourable aspects of CP Achieve to ensure they are also addressed when considering options. As discussed by Blake, we also utilise the information provided on the fears, hope and expectations and ideas expressed on transitioning to ensure that the transition itself will include these factors, which a common comment included reassurance of their work in CP Achieve being valued and continued using their perspective in research programs. Another recommendation put together was finding a resource or a package that acknowledges the contribution each person has made and the achievements of the consumer research partners as a symbolic act. This would be beneficial in being a symbolic act to bring the program to a complete close, which was supported in the research conducted in the literature review and was discussed in the meetings as something that would be of sentimental value.
So in terms of the actual deliverables now that we've started to develop from those recommendations, as I said earlier, the fluidity of this project and its constant evolution in time has meant that those deliverables have changed from those initial weeks. So the first key deliverable that we've proposed, and based on those responses and recommendations, is those acknowledgement letters or certificates. Now, this would be a personalised conclusion to CP Achieve, and not only would it provide each partner with a sense of individualized acknowledgement within the program, but it will also provide a base of networking and connection with other partners. Anyone with social media would be able to look up other members' names and connect if that's something they would like to do. A key aspect of this draft that we've made is that it will include the partner's name, the date in which they started with CP Achieve, the research projects they were involved in, as well as potentially a little blurb that just thanks them personally to add that extra little touch. The second proposed resource that we developed was also based on those recommendations and the responses, which is an information sheet for future research partner opportunities. As we covered earlier, the research partners shared a real interest in wanting to continue working as research partners in the future. So we've since developed a document that will act as an information sheet with some links to other organisations and research opportunities, as well as a link to a Google Forms to complete and state which mailing list they would like to be added to. So this resource will not only act as an information sheet, but it will also provide those links so they can go do their own research and then act and have some autonomy and choose what they would like to do rather than us telling them this is what you can go do from here on out. They've got a bit more choice and control. So both of these documents are currently just in the draft stage and will obviously need to be finalised and completed over the next couple of months to be sent out before CP Achieve concludes in late December. So we're currently working on developing our handover documents to ensure that our findings from our meetings and our research is translated to the team, who will continue seeing these deliverables be made. So to conclude, we want to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined this meeting today and listening to our presentation. And we'd also like to say a really big thank you in particular to all our research partners that were involved, as well as the team of advisors that have helped us, guided us through this process. So especially thank you to Margaret Wallen and Carolyn Pinto, who have been fantastic supervisors and also fantastic collaborators in helping us work through a lot of those processes and set up those meetings and resources. So thank you to both of you. We'd also like to say a big thank you to Sevastine Katsakis, who was our consumer engagement officer and really helped give a lot of time to set up those meetings with our research partners and make sure they ran smoothly. So thank you, Sev. Thank you as well to Claire Rowland, who has been helping develop some of those resources in terms of the future research projects and linking us in with a few programs that we're hopefully going to include on that. And as well, thank you to Diana Reddyhoff for recording that concluding video that we scripted alongside Carolyn and Margaret. As we said earlier, the consumers really enjoyed watching that and hearing, your acknowledgements for them. So it was really, really appreciated.